He banned me from the wedding via text message because I didn't fit his vibe of success, but he conveniently forgot I was the one paying the $100,000 bill. He thought the old forensic auditor was just a worn-out ATM he could tap until dry. He was about to find out that I don't just read financial statements, I weaponize them. If you are listening to this, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you are watching from. It helps to know there is a jury out there witnessing the evidence. He wanted me out of the picture, so I decided to show him what happens when you try to cook the books in front of the man who wrote the manual on fraud. It started with a sound that should have been innocent, but signaled the end of everything. The notification sound was standard, a digital chirp, factory set, innocuous. A simple, polite ding that happens a billion times a day around the world. But in the hermetic quiet of my study, it didn't sound polite. It sounded like the sharp crack of a gavel striking sound would. It was a sound of finality. I froze. My hand, liver-spotted and steady from decades of scanning microscopic spreadsheets, hovered over the polished mahogany of my desk. The room was aggressively silent. It smelled of old paper, the bindery glue of leather-bound law books, and the faint, sweet ghost of a cigar I had smoked 3 weeks ago to celebrate a closed case. This room was my sanctuary. It was a fortress of logic in a chaotic world. But that sound, that electronic intrusion, severed the peace like a razor wire. I lowered myself slowly into my leather armchair. It was a wingback, oxblood red. The leather cracked and softened like an old baseball mitt. My late wife, Catherine, had bought it for me 30 years ago, dragging it through the front door herself, laughing at my protests about the cost. "You need a throne, Frank," she had said. "Every king needs a throne." It usually felt like a hug, the way the worn seat molded to the curve of my spine. Tonight, however, the leather felt cold, rigid. It didn't feel like a throne. It felt like a trap, and the walls of the study seemed to inch closer. My name is Frank. I am 65 years old, and I exist in a world of black ink and red ink. For 40 years, I worked as a forensic auditor for the Department of Justice. My life has been defined by one singular obsession, the pursuit of truth hidden in columns of numbers. I don't look at people's faces to find out who they are. Faces lie. Smiles are masks. I look at their bank statements. I look at their credit history. I hunted embezzlers who smiled for charity photo ops while draining orphans' funds. I hunted money launderers who wore Italian silk suits, paid for by blood. I hunted corporate fraudsters who thought they were smarter than the system, smarter than the math. I learned early on that numbers are the only pure thing in this universe. Numbers never lie. They never cheat. They never leave you. But the people who write them, they almost always do. Tomorrow was Saturday. The date was circled in red on my physical desk calendar, the only splash of color in the room. It was the biggest day of my life, eclipsing even my own retirement. The day my only daughter, Jessica, was marrying Ryan. Jessica was 25, a vibrant splash of watercolor in my grayscale world. She had Catherine's eyes bright, trusting, incapable of seeing the darkness in others. And she had her mother's heart too big for her own good, a dangerous liability in a world full of wolves. Then there was Ryan. Ryan described himself as a visionary real estate developer. In my experience sitting across interrogation tables from men in shiny shoes, visionary usually translated to unemployed with a dangerous line of credit. He spoke in buzzwords synergy, disruption, flow state. But I had tried. God knows I had tried to be open-minded. I swallowed my suspicions. I buried the auditor deep inside me. I wanted Jessica to be happy, and if this man with the blinding white 8 and the vague business plan made her happy, I would sign the checks. I picked up my phone. The screen was dark, reflecting my own face, gray stubble, heavy bags under the eyes. My hand was steady. It's always steady. A shaky hand misses the decimal point. I slid my reading glasses onto the bridge of my nose. I expected a text about the seating chart. Perhaps a crisis regarding the table arrangements for her cousins from Ohio. Or maybe just a nervous, late night. "I love you, Dad." I was ready to reassure her. I was ready to be the father, not the auditor. I unlocked the screen. The blue light washed over the darkened room. The message was indeed from Jessica. But it wasn't a quick burst of text. It was a block of gray on the screen. A wall of words. It was long. Too long for a check-in the night before a wedding. I felt a cold prickle start at the base of my spine and crawl up to the back of my neck. The ancient biological warning of a predator nearby. Something is wrong. The silence in the room suddenly felt heavy, pressurized. I began to read, my lips moving slightly, trying to shape the words into something that made sense. Dad, I'm sorry to do this over text. I paused. My stomach turned over, a slow, sickening rotation. People only apologize over text when they are too cowardly to face the devastation they are about to cause. But Ryan and I have been talking. The phrase hung there. Ryan and I, not Jessica. The unit, the corporation. Don't come to the wedding. The words sat there, inert, black pixels on a white background. Don't come. I blinked, convinced my prescription needed updating. I took my glasses off, wiped them on my cardigan, and put them back on. The words hadn't changed. They were absolute, a locked door. I read it again, forcing my brain to process the syntax. Ryan hates you. He says you're constantly judging him. You look at him like he's a criminal. You make us feel small. We don't want your negative energy ruining our day. The accusations hit me like rivets being driven into steel. Hate. Judging. Negative. I stopped breathing for a second. The air in the room felt too thin. Negative energy. I had paid for the venue, the Grand Hotel, the ballroom with the crystal chandeliers she loved. I had paid for the catering, 5 courses, open bar, the expensive Scotch wine, requested. I had paid for the dress she was wearing when she typed this lace. Custom fitted, costing more than my first car. I was the financier of this day of success. Yet I was the liability. I forced myself to read the rest, though bile was rising in my throat. We want a vibe of success and support, and you just bring suspicion. Please respect our decision. We'll send pictures. Jess, we'll send pictures. The phrase echoed in the empty room, like I was a distant uncle who lived in a different state, like I was a donor to a charity who gets a newsletter once a year, like I hadn't carried her on my shoulders at the zoo, like I hadn't sat by her bed for 3 nights when she had the flu, holding a cold cloth to her forehead, like I hadn't been the one to hold her when her mother died. Both of us weeping in this very room. We'll send pictures. It was a dismissal, a receipt for a transaction voided. I set the phone down on the desk, face up. The screen timed out and went black, but the words were burned into my retinas, glowing in the afterimage. Ryan hates you. The silence of the house rushed back in. But now it wasn't peaceful. It was deafening. It was the sound of a life being hollowed out. A physical blow would have hurt less. If someone had walked into the study and broken my jaw, I could have processed the pain. I could have iced it. This felt as though someone had reached into my chest, bypassed the ribs, and squeezed my heart until the rhythm faltered. I looked at the framed photo on my desk, right next to the brass lamp. Jessica at age 5, missing a front tooth, holding a dandelion. For you, Daddy, she had said. The girl in the photo was gone, erased by a text message. My first instinct was the father's instinct. It was primal, panic. Pure, hot, blinding panic. Call her, fix it, beg. I would get on my knees. I would promise to smile more. I would promise to compliment Ryan's vague business ideas. I'd stand in the back. I wouldn't say a word. Just let me see her. I wanted to apologize. I wanted to say sorry for whatever imagined slight I had committed. Maybe I was too hard. Maybe my face was too stern. Years of auditing had frozen my features into a mask of skepticism. I just want to see you walk down the aisle. Please. It's all I have left of Catherine. I reached for the phone again. My thumb hovered over the call button. I was shaking now, a fine tremor in the hands that had signed 1,000 subpoenas. I was a broken old man in a dark room, terrified of losing the last person on earth who shared his DNA. The loneliness washed over me like a rogue wave, cold and suffocating. But then, as my thumb trembled over the glass, something shifted. A gear turned deep in the architecture of my brain. A familiar, cold mechanism engaged. The weeping father hit a wall of reinforced steel. The sadness didn't vanish, but it was compartmentalized, filed away, and in its place, The auditor woke up. I stopped. I took a breath, holding it in my lungs until they burned, then exhaled slowly through my nose. I pulled my thumb back from the screen. I placed the phone on the desk, aligning it perfectly parallel with the edge of my blotter. I looked at the text again. But this time, I didn't look at it as a father whose heart had been ripped out. I looked at it as an analyst examining a piece of evidence. I looked at it as a structural engineer looking for a stress fracture in a support beam. Ryan says, "You're constantly judging him. We want a vibe of success." The language was specific. It was performative. It was defensive. I closed my eyes and tried to conjure Jessica's voice. Jessica, who apologized to waiters if they dropped a fork. Jessica, who wrote poetry in high school about wounded birds. Jessica didn't use words like vibe of success. That was aggressive corporate vernacular. That was the language of someone trying to sell you a bridge. That was marketing speak.
That was a sales pitch disguised as an emotional plea.
That was Ryan. The realization hit me with the clarity of a diamond cutter. She didn't write this. She might have typed it. She might have had the phone. But he dictated. He stood over her, probably pacing, probably using his hands to emphasize the words, pouring his own insecurity into her thumbs. He was using her as a human shield to fire shots at me. I stood up. My knees popped. A dry, cracking sound in the quiet room. Age is a thief that takes your cartilage first, then your dignity. I walked to the window. The heavy velvet curtains were drawn, but I parted them, just an inch. The Chicago skyline was a grid of amber and white lights in the distance, shivering in the heat haze. It looked cold tonight, despite the summer air. A city of millions, all asleep, while I stood awake in the wreckage. Why now? I asked the silence. The question hung in the air, demanding an answer. The wedding was less than 24 hours away. The checks had cleared weeks ago. The contracts were signed. The guests were flying in. Why cut me out at the 11th hour? Why trigger a conflict now? Strategically, it made no sense. If you hate the investor, you wait until the project is finished to fire him. Unless my reflection in the glass looked ghostly. Usually, fraudsters wait until the end. They wait until the money is gone. Unless the project isn't finished. Or rather, unless the project never existed. They needed me out of the way for the final act. They needed to ensure I wouldn't be standing at the altar, wouldn't be talking to the vendors, wouldn't be anywhere near the machinery of the wedding, because the machinery was broken, because the money wasn't where it was supposed to be. I let the curtain fall back. The city disappeared. I walked back to my desk. I didn't feel sadness anymore. That would come later, I knew. Grief is a debt that always collects eventually. But for now, I felt a cold, crystalline focus. The temperature in my blood seemed to drop. It was the kind of focus I used to have before a raid, watching the sun come up over a warehouse in Jersey, knowing we were about to ruin someone's life because they broke the rules. I opened my laptop, the hinge stiffened, then gave way. The screen glowed to life, bathing the study in a harsh, clinical blue light. It illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air. I cracked my knuckles. Crack, crack, crack. "Let's see the books," I whispered. The voice wasn't mine. It was the auditor's. I had set up a joint account for the wedding expenses at the start of the engagement. I had deposited $100,000 into it 6 months ago. A lifetime of savings for some. A drop in the bucket for the wedding industry. It was meant to cover everything. The venue rental, the artisan florist, the 5-tier cake, the honeymoon in Italy that Jessica had dreamed of since she watched Roman Holiday when she was 12. I had given Ryan a debit card for the account. I remembered the moment clearly. We were at dinner. He had reached for the card with a little too much eagerness, his eyes glinting. "Let me take the lead, Frank," he had said, flashing that polished, shark-like smile. "I want to show you I can handle the logistics. I want to take the burden off Jess." It sounded noble. Now it sounded like a predator asking for the keys to the sheep pen. I logged into the bank portal. I typed my password slowly, deliberately. FSTERLING89. The two-factor authentication pinged my phone. I entered the code. The loading circle spun, around and around. For 3 seconds I prayed. A secular, desperate prayer to the gods of probability. Please be wrong, I thought. Please let me be a paranoid old man. Please let the balance be $10,000. Please let this just be a misunderstanding. The page loaded. The numbers resolved on the screen. My eyes went instantly to the bottom right. The bottom line, the truth, through $338. I stared at the number, 348. Not enough to pay for the champagne toast. Not enough to pay for the flowers on the head table. I blinked. I hit refresh, thinking it was a glitch. A caching error. $38. My blood ran cold. It felt as if the floor had opened up beneath my chair. $100,000. Gone. Evaporated. The structure had collapsed. The load-bearing wall was missing. I clicked on the transaction history. I expected to see payments to the Grand Hotel, to Elite Catering, to City Florists. I expected to see the mundane, exorbitant hemorrhage of wedding planning. Instead, I saw a slaughter. The screen was a list of red text, scrolling down, page after page. May 12, withdrawal, cash, $5,000. May 15, transfer, crypto flow exchange. May 20, payment, luxury lease, auto, $4,500. June 4, payment, Club Velvet VIP, $8,000. Club Velvet, a high-end gentleman's club downtown. He wasn't just stealing, he was celebrating the theft. I scrolled down, my eyes scanning faster now. My eyes narrowed into slits. There were no vendor payments. Not one. No hotel. No food. No music. Where is the venue money? I muttered. The silence of the room screamed back at me. It's gone, Frank. It was never there. Then I saw the big one. The fatal blow. June 3. Transfer R. Miller Holdings, LLC, $25,000. I opened a new tab. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I searched for R. Miller Holdings, LLC. Nothing on the first page of Google, no website, no LinkedIn, no press releases for a visionary developer. I pulled up the Illinois State Business Registry. I punched in the name. There it was. Entity name, Miller Holdings, LLC. Incorporation date, March 12, 2024. 3 months ago. Registered agent Ryan Miller. I looked at the address. It wasn't an office tower in the Loop. It wasn't a co-working space in River North. It was a P.O. box in a strip mall in Cicero, sandwiched between a laundromat and a vape shop. He wasn't paying vendors. He wasn't handling logistics. He was funneling the wedding money into a shell company. He was washing it. He was stealing it all. But it was worse than simple theft. Simple theft is desperate. This was systemic. I checked the credit card I had co-signed for Jessica. It was intended for emergency house expenses only. A boiler repair, a medical deductible, a safety net for my little girl. The page loaded. Balance, $48,000. Over limit. The font was red and bold. Screaming danger. The transactions were a litany of narcissistic excess. Breeding, watches, $8,500. DraftKings Sportsbook, $2,000. DraftKings Sportsbook, $3,500. Best Buy, high-end electronics, $4,000. I sat back. The leather chair creaked loudly under my weight, a sound like a tree branch about to snap. This wasn't just a greedy fiancé skimming off the top. This was a financial predator. A parasite. He hadn't just taken the money. He had taken her credit. He had taken her future, had hollowed her out from the inside, leaving nothing but a shell, and he was planning to walk away before the building fell down. He had stripped her clean. I needed to know more. The what was clear theft. The how was emerging. Wire fraud. But I needed the who and the where. I stared at the phone. It was 11:15 p.m. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Carter, Marilyn. Marilyn was the branch manager at the regional bank where the LLC account was held. We had worked a RICO case together 10 years ago when she was in compliance. She owed me. I hesitated. Calling a bank manager at midnight to request unauthorized access to a client's account was a felony, or at least a career-ending violation. "Frank, don't do this," I whispered. But then I looked at the empty wedding fund. "Marilyn, I need a favor, off the books." I pressed call. The phone rang 4 times. Frank? Her voice was thick with sleep. Then instantly alert. It's late. Is everything okay? I need you to open your laptop, Marilyn. Excuse me? I need to know about an entity called R. Miller Holdings. Excuse me? I need to know about an entity called R. Miller Holdings. Frank, you know I can't do that. That's a privacy breach. I could lose my license. It's Jessica's money, Marilyn. He emptied the wedding account. All of it. The line went silent. I could hear her breathing. She had been at Jessica's christening. Please? I added. The word tasted like ash. I never said please. I heard the rustle of sheets, the click of a lamp, then the rhythmic tapping of a keyboard. Give me a second, she whispered. I waited in the dark, listening to the digital handshake miles away. Okay, I'm in, she said. Her tone shifted from sleepy friend to cold banker. Brink, this is bad. Tell me. The structure is designed to obscure. Money hits the LLC from your joint account. It sits for less than an hour. And then, immediate wire transfer out. International. Where does it go, Marilyn? It's bouncing through a correspondent bank in New York, then settling in the Cayman Islands. A shell account. Standard laundering, I noted. Who is the signatory on the Cayman end? I shouldn't be able to see that, she said. But he was sloppy with the beneficiary field. He left a note. Give me the name. Claire Johnson. Who's Claire Johnson? I don't know, Frank, but she's listed as the corporate secretary and the primary beneficiary. Claire Johnson, I repeated, writing the name on a legal pad in the dark. Frank, Marilyn said, her voice dropping. There's more. The account isn't just receiving funds. It's paying rent. Rent for what?
A condo in Lake Shore East.
A penthouse. The lease is in the name of the LLC. He wasn't just stealing the money. He was housing someone with it. Thank you, Marilyn. Delete the logs. Be careful, Frank. I hung up. I turned back to the laptop. Social media makes detective work pitifully easy. People commit crimes, then tag themselves at the scene. I typed Claire Johnson, Chicago into the search bar. Thousands of hits. I narrowed it. Claire Johnson, Ryan Miller. Bingo. Instagram, a public profile. There she was. Blonde, polished, expensive. I scrolled through her feed 3 weeks ago. A photo of her and Ryan. They were on a boat, a sleek white yacht on Lake Michigan. The sign was setting. Ryan was wearing a polo shirt and holding a glass of champagne. On his wrist was a watch, a Breitling Navitimer, the exact model charged to Jessica's credit card on May 12th. The caption read, New beginnings with my partner in crime. Name, Tower Couple. The takeover. I felt bile rise in my throat. Partner in crime. They thought it was a metaphor. It was a confession. I stared at Ryan's face in the photo. He looked happier than I had ever seen him. With Jessica. With Jessica, he looked managed. Here, he looked triumphant. He wasn't just stealing money for gambling. He was building a new life. He was financing his exit strategy with my daughter's credit score. I felt a surge of rage, so pure, so white-hot, it made my hands shake. I wanted to drive to that condo. I wanted to kick down the door. I wanted to tear him apart with my bare hands. No, that's what he wants. He wants the angry father. He wants the assault charge. That gives him the victim card. I forced my hands to unclench. I needed to know the extent of the road. I called my sister, Sarah. Sarah was a paralegal at a high-end firm downtown. She spent her days navigating the labyrinth of the Cook County court system. She was sharp as a tack and twice as mean when she needed to be. Frank? She answered on the first ring. She was a night owl, usually buried in case files. Sarah, you mentioned you saw Ryan at the courthouse last week. Yeah, Tuesday, I waved, but he didn't see me. Think hard, Sarah. Where exactly was he? I assumed he was getting the marriage license. The clerk's office is on the 2nd floor. Was he in the line for licenses? No. She paused. I could hear her lighting a cigarette. Now that you mention it, he was coming out of the records division. The basement. Records handles deeds and liens. I said. My blood ran cold. What was he pulling, Frank? I need you to check the log. Can you access the remote portal? I'm already logging in. Hold on. Keys clacked. A long silence. Frank, she said, and her voice was different. Scared. What did he pull? He pulled the deed to your house. And the deed to the lake cabin. I closed my eyes, and, she continued, he requested a copy of your living will and testament. He wasn't just satisfied with the wedding cash. He was checking my assets. He was calculating my net worth. He was waiting for me to die. Or perhaps planning to expedite the process. He's playing the long con, Sarah. I hung up. The picture was complete. Step 1, drain the liquid cash. Wedding fund. Step 2, max out the credit. Jessica's cards. Step 3, marry into the family to secure legal standing. Step 4, wait for the old man to die and inherit the estate. I needed muscle. This was no longer a domestic dispute. This was a hostile extraction. I called my brother Uncle Robert, where Robert was ex-military. Special forces, then private security contracting in places you don't find on a tourist map. We hadn't spoken much lately. We were different kinds of men. But blood is blood. Robert, I need you. What time is it? His voice was gravel, instantly awake. No grogginess. It doesn't matter. It's Jessica's wedding. Is she hurt? Not physically. Not yet. It's a setup, Robert. The fiancé is a con man. How deep? 6 figures deep. And he's eyeing the estate. I need containment. Say the word, Frank. You want him scared, or you want him gone? I want him arrested, but I need security at the venue. I need to make sure he doesn't cause a scene when the hammer drops. Tomorrow morning, I'll bring the team. We'll be ghost. Now, I needed the final piece. The law. I couldn't call the local police. They would call it a civil matter. He's her fiancé. They share accounts. Work it out in small claims. I needed federal jurisdiction. I dialed Agent David Miller. No relation to Ryan. David was my former student at the academy. I had taught him how to trace shell companies through 3 layers of offshore trusts. He was now FBI White-Collar Crimes Division. Frank, it's Friday night, David said. I'm having a beer. Put the beer down, David. I have a wire fraud case. Can it wait until Monday? I'm off the clock. No, the subject is imminent flight risk. The money is moving to the Caymans as we speak. David sighed. Who is the subject? Ryan Miller. A groom? Frank, isn't the wedding tomorrow? There is no wedding, David. There is only a crime scene. Frank, if this is you having cold feet about your son-in-law, he structured $25,000 deposits to avoid CTR reporting. He's laundering stolen funds through a crypto exchange into an offshore entity. I spoke the language of the job. Cold, precise, irrefutable. I'm sending you the logs, I said. I have the IP addresses. I have the shell company registration. I have the beneficiary name. I hit send on the email I had been compiling while we spoke. Frank, surely we can handle this quietly. He stole $100,000 from my daughter, David. He destroyed her credit. He's planning to leverage my estate. Okay, David said, his voice tightening. I see the file. Jesus, Frank. This looks like a Ponzi scheme structure. It is. And Jessica is the latest investor. If we move on this, David said, it's going to be a raid. If he's at the venue, Jessica gets splashed. She's already drowning, David, I said, my voice cracking for the first time. I can't save her heart. That's already broken. I looked at the picture of Jessica on my desk again. I need you to arrest him before he destroys her future completely, before he marries her and attaches his debt to her name forever. Okay, David said. I'll get a warrant. It'll be tight, but the crypto transfers give us probable cause for immediate seizure. Do it. We roll at 0900 hours. I looked at the grandfather clock in the corner of the steady. The pendulum swung with a rhythmic mocking tick-tock. 11:45 p.m., the witching hour for banking. The batch processing window. If I wanted to stop the bleeding, I had to apply the tourniquet now. If I waited until morning, automated payments might clear, If I waited, Ryan might wake up early and move the last crumbs. I cracked my neck. The sadness was gone, fully replaced by a cold, operational efficiency. I was no longer a father planning a wedding. I was an executioner. I turned back to the glowing screen. Step 1, the liquidation. I looked at the pathetic balance in the joint account again. 300 month, 38 big. At last, it was an insulting sum. A tip left on a table after a robbery. I could have left it. It wouldn't make a difference to my net worth. But the principle of the audit demanded zero variance. I initiated a transfer to my personal savings. Memo, recovery of stolen assets. I clicked submit. The screen flashed. Transfer complete. New balance, $0. It was petty. It was vindictive. But watching that number hit zero felt like the first breath of air I'd taken in an hour. Step 2, the credit freeze. I picked up the landline, the secure line. I dialed the 24-hour Platinum Fraud Desk. I knew the number by heart. American Express Fraud Detection. This is automated agent. I punched it repeatedly until a human answered. Mr. Sterling, verification code, please. Alpha Zulu 94. Thank you, Frank. How can I help you tonight? I need to report unauthorized activity on the supplemental card ending in 804250. Cardholder Jessica Sterling. Okay, which transactions? All of them, I said, my voice flat. From May 1st to present. The watch, the gambling, the electronics. None of it was authorized by the primary account holder. That's substantial, sir. We will need to lock the card immediately. Do it. Flag it as stolen compromise. If anyone tries to swipe it tomorrow, even for a stick of gum, I want the terminal to scream declined. Done. The card is dead, Mr. Sterling. Step 3, the venue. This was the hardest call. This was the one that would make the private disaster public. I stared at the number for Jim Henderson, the owner of the Grand Hotel. We played golf occasionally. He was a good man, but a businessman first. I dialed his cell. It rang 6 times. I was about to hang up when he answered, groggy and irritated. Frank, it's midnight. Is everything all right? Wake up, Jim. I need you lucid. What is it? Cold feet? Don't tell me the groom is bolting. The groom isn't bolting, I said. The groom is a thief. What? Jim's voice sharpened. Frank, you're not making sense. We have 200 pounds of sea bass in the cooler. The florists are setting up at 6:00 a.m. Listen to me carefully, Jim. Do not open the doors tomorrow. Are you crazy? The contract is signed. The staff is scheduled. The check Ryan gave you for the final installment, I said, cutting him off. The $40,000 check. Have you deposited it yet? No. I was going to run it Monday with the weekend receipts. It's going to bounce, Jim. It's rubber. Silence on the line. I could hear him sitting up in bed. Frank, are you sure? That's a serious accusation. I'm looking at the ledger right now. The account is empty. 0. If you open those doors, you are throwing a $100,000 party for free. Jesus Christ. Jim exhaled. He told me the funds were wire-locked until Friday. He gave me a song and dance about international liquidity. It was a stall, I said. He was buying time to clear out the accounts. What do I do, Frank? I have a business to run. I can't just lock it up, I commanded. Chain the doors. Put security at the gate. If anyone asks, tell them the contract was voided for non-payment. Ryan is going to flip out. He'll sue me. Let him try. He can't afford a lawyer. Okay, Jim said, his voice shaking. I'll call the night manager. The doors stay shut. Thanks, Jim. Send the cancellation bill to me. I'll cover your costs. But not a penny for the party. I hung up. It was done. The trap was set. The exits were sealed. The assets were frozen. I sat in the dark for a long time. The silence in the house was absolute, heavy as a funeral shroud. I had just nuked my daughter's wedding day. I had just ensured that the happiest day of her life would become the most traumatic. I looked at my hands. They were still steady. Why were they steady? I should be weeping. But the auditor doesn't weep. The auditor balances the books. And the books were finally balancing. I walked upstairs. Every step creaked, sounding like the snapping of small bones. I passed Jessica's old room. The door was slightly ajar. I could see the silhouette of her childhood trophies on the shelf. She's going to hate me, I thought. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. She will look at me tomorrow and she will see a monster. But better she hates me and keeps her freedom than loves me and loses her life to that leech. I went to my bedroom. I lay down on top of the covers, fully dressed. I stared at the ceiling, watching the shadows of the tree branches outside move like spider webs across the plaster. I closed my eyes, but I didn't sleep. I lay there a century in the night, waiting for the sun to rise on the wreckage of my family. I woke at 5:00 a.m. I hadn't truly slept. I had merely hovered in a gray space between consciousness and dread. The sun was just beginning to bruise the horizon, casting a pale, sickly light into the bedroom. I swung my legs out of bed. My joints popped, knees, ankles, spine, the soundtrack of decay. I walked to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. The face staring back was gray, etched with deep lines, but the eyes were clear, hard. I showered, scrubbing my skin until it was red, as if trying to wash away the betrayal I felt on Jessica's behalf. I shaved with a straight razor. One slip could draw blood. My hand did not slip. I went to the closet and pulled out my tuxedo. I dressed slowly, shirt studs, cufflinks gold, a gift from Catherine, the cummerbund, the bow tie. I wasn't dressing for a wedding. I was donning armor. I was a soldier preparing for a tribunal. I sat in the kitchen at 6:00 a.m. The house was tomb quiet. The refrigerator hummed its electric monotone. I drank black coffee. It tasted like battery acid, but the caffeine sharpened the edges of my vision. I placed my phone on the granite island, face up. I waited. 6:30 a.m. The screen lit, the vibration buzzed against the stone like an angry hornet. Incoming call, Jessica. Her photo on the screen was a selfie of us at her college graduation. She was beaming. I looked proud. I let it ring. Every vibration felt like a needle in my chest. I wanted to answer. I wanted to tell her it was going to be okay. But it wasn't okay, and if I answered now, Ryan would take the phone. He would spin a story, he would plead. He would manipulate. I had to let the pressure build. I had to let the reality of the situation crush the lies he had told her. The ringing stopped. Silence returned, heavier than before. 6:35 a.m. Call from Ryan. 6:36 a.m. Call from Ryan. 6:40 a.m. Text from Jessica. Dad? Are you up? The cards aren't working. The makeup artist is here and the machine declined. It says stolen card. I stared at the text. I could hear the panic in her voice through the pixels. The embarrassment. 6:45. Text from Ryan. Frank, there's a glitch with the bank. Call me immediately. We need to sort this out before Jess freaks out. A glitch. Even now, he was lying. He was trying to manage me. 7:00 a.m. The phone was vibrating continuously now. It was dancing across the counter. 11:18 missed calls. From Jessica. From Ryan. From the maid of honor. From the best man. The panic was spreading like a virus. The contagion of insolvency. I watched the notifications stack up. Jessica. Dad. Please pick up. I'm scared. Ryan. Unfreeze the accounts. Frank. This isn't funny. Jessica. We're at the venue. The doors are chained. Dad! The police are here. Security. They won't let us in. I took a final sip of coffee. The vibe of success Ryan wanted was dissolving into a vibe of absolute catastrophe. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. Time to go, I said to the empty kitchen. I grabbed my keys. I didn't take the SUV. I took the 1968 Mustang in the garage. Catherine's favorite car. The engine roared to life, a guttural, angry sound. I drove to the venue. The city was waking up. The sky was a cruel, brilliant blue. The birds were singing. Joggers were running along the lakefront, checking their pulses. The world was completely indifferent to the disaster unfolding in my family. It was just another Saturday. I drove with the windows in. The wind messed up my hair, but I didn't care. I needed the air. The car smelled of gasoline and old leather, the scent of nostalgia, the scent of a time when things were built to last, unlike Ryan's shell companies. I turned onto the long driveway of the Grand Hotel. Usually this drive is lined with anticipation. Today, it was lined with confusion. I saw the chaos before I heard it. The parking lot was a sea of shimmering metal and distressed silk. Guests were standing in clusters, shielding their eyes from the sun. Men in tuxedos are loosening their ties. Women in heels were shifting uncomfortably on the asphalt. There was no music, no laughter, only the low, anxious murmur of a crowd that realizes something is terribly wrong. I pulled the Mustang up to the front, right next to the white Rolls-Royce Ryan had rented and likely not paid for. The main doors of the hotel were wrapped in heavy steel chains. A padlock the size of a fist secured them. 2 uniformed security guards, Jim's men, stood with their arms crossed, blocking the entrance. Ryan was screaming at the older guard. His face, usually tan and composed, was a mottled purple. "Do you know who I am?" he shrieked. "I will buy this building and fire you. Open the goddamn door." Jessica was sitting on the curb a few feet away. Her head was in her hands. The skirt of her white dress was pooling on the dirty concrete. I killed the engine. The silence that followed was sharp. I opened the door and stepped out. My dress shoes clicked on the pavement. Heads turned. A ripple went through the crowd. "It's Frank. Her dad is here. He'll fix it." They looked at me with relief. They knew I was the money. They knew I was the one who made problems go away. They didn't realize I was the one who had created this problem. "Frank!" Ryan saw me. His eyes bulged. The mask of the charming entrepreneur slipped completely, revealing the cornered rat beneath. He charged over, pushing past a bewildered bridesmaid. "You son of a bitch!" He stopped 3 feet from me, breathing hard. He smelled of sweat and stale fear. "You did this," he shouted, pointing a shaking finger at my chest. "You froze the accounts," Ryan yelled. The card declined. The makeup artist walked out. "The caterer isn't setting up. You called Henderson," he continued, his voice cracking. "He says the contract is void." I stood my ground. I didn't blink. I didn't raise my voice. I adjusted my cuffs. "I simply respected your wishes, Ryan," I said. My voice was calm, carrying over the hush of the crowd. "My wishes?" Ryan spluttered. "What are you talking about?" "I wanted a wedding. I have investors coming." "You sent me a text last night," I said, pitching my voice so the front row of guests could hear. "You said I wasn't welcome. You said I made you feel small." I took a step closer to him, the structural engineer inspecting the crack in the foundation. "You said my energy was negative." "So," I continued, "I removed my negative energy. I paused for effect, and I removed my positive bank balance." A gasp went through the crowd. A murmur of understanding mixed with shock. Ryan looked around, his eyes darting wildly. He realized he was losing the audience. He tried to pivot. "You can't do this," he shouted, trying to sound authoritative. "This is illegal. I have business partners here. This is a breach of contract." "You have no business partners, Ryan," I said. "You have marks. I have investors. You have gambling debts," I countered. "DraftKings. The Golden Nugget. $40,000 in the last 3 months. "Liar," he screamed. "And a leased Range Rover you haven't made a payment on in 60 days. I added relentlessly. "Repossession is scheduled for Monday." Ryan froze. The blood drained from his face, leaving it pasty and white. "And I delivered the final blow. You have a girlfriend named Claire Johnson." The name hung in the humid air like smoke. Jessica, who had been sobbing quietly on the curb, stopped. She looked up. Her mascara was running, staining her cheeks black. "Dad?" she whispered. Her voice was small, terrified. "Who is Claire?" I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes locked on Ryan. "Ask him, Jess," I said. "Ask him about the penthouse in Lakeshore East. Ask him about the boat trip 3 weeks ago." Ryan looked at Jessica, then back at me. He saw his entire world, the lies, the money, the future he had stolen, collapsing. Fight or flight kicked in. "Liar!" Ryan screamed, a primal, animal sound. He lunged at me. He was 30 years younger than me. He was fit. He was desperate. He raised a fist, aiming for my face. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I didn't have to. A shadow detached itself from the side of a catering van. Uncle Robert stepped out. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He simply occupied the space between me and Ryan. Robert was 62, but he was built like a vending machine made of concrete. He wore a black suit that fit poorly over his shoulders. Ryan's fist was inches from Robert's face when he realized his mistake. Robert caught Ryan's wrist. He didn't twist it. He just held it. It looked like a father holding a child's hand across the street. But the tension in Robert's forearm told a different story. "Don't," Robert grunted. One word, absolute command. Ryan stopped. He looked at Robert's dead eyes. He looked at the size of the man. Then he looked at the exit of the parking lot. He wrenched his arm free. He stumbled back. Tires screeched in the distance. The trap was about to snap shut. The sound of his screeching tires tore through the morning air, drowning out the murmurs of the guests. It wasn't just one car. 3 black SUVs, unmarked but unmistakable in their authority, surged into the hotel driveway, blocking the exit in a tight, tactical formation. The doors flew open in unison. 6 men and women stepped out. They wore navy blue windbreakers with yellow lettering. FBI. They moved with a fluid, terrifying synchronization. Guns were drawn, but held low. "Federal agents." A voice boomed. "Nobody move. Hands where we can see them." The crowd of wedding guests gasped and recoiled, pressing back against the hotel walls like a single organism. Ryan panicked. The flight response took over, but there was nowhere to run. He spun around, eyes wide and white, looking for a shield. He grabbed Jessica. He didn't grab her hand to comfort her. He grabbed her upper arm, his fingers digging into the soft flesh, and yanked her roughly in front of him. "She did it!" he screamed, his voice cracking into a high, hysterical pitch. He pointed a shaking finger at the woman he was supposed to marry in 2 hours. "She signed the checks. It's her account. Look at the name on the card." "I just did what she told me," Ryan yelled, backing away, trying to put Jessica between himself and the approaching agents. "She's the launderer. She wanted the money for the wedding. I didn't know anything." The silence that followed was absolute. The birds stopped singing. The wind seemed to die. Even the agents paused for a microsecond, disgusted by the display. Jessica stood frozen. She didn't struggle. She stared at him, her eyes wide, unblinking. The man she loved. The man she had defended to me for a year. The visionary. He wasn't protecting her. He was throwing her to the wolves to save his own skin. "Ryan?" she whispered. The word was barely a breath. It was the sound of a reality shattering. "Tell them, Jess," he pleaded, shaking her. "Tell them it was your idea. You have a clean record. They'll go easy on you. Don't let me go to jail." He was begging her to take the fall. I watched from 5 feet away. My heart was racing, but my face was stone. This was the final piece of evidence, the character witness. She needed to see this. She needed to see the rat without the costume. Agent David Miller stepped forward. He holstered his weapon. He didn't look at Jessica. His eyes were locked on Ryan. He walked right up to them, effectively ignoring Ryan's human shield. He reached out, grabbed Ryan by the shoulder of his rented tuxedo, and spun him around. He slammed him against the hood of the Rolls-Royce. The sound of metal on metal rang out. "Ryan Miller," David said, his voice bored and professional. "You are under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and identity theft." The handcuffs clicked. Click, click. The sound was final. David hauled Ryan up. Ryan was sobbing now, snot running down his face, his legs giving out. "Frank, help me," he wailed, as they dragged him toward the SUV. "I can explain. It was a loan, a short-term loan. I didn't answer. I simply watched him disappear into the back of the federal vehicle." David adjusted his jacket and turned to Jessica. "Miss Sterling," he said gently, "we're going to need a statement. You're not a suspect, but we need to clear the paper trail." Jessica looked at him, then at the empty space where Ryan had been. She crumbled. It wasn't a graceful faint. Her legs simply stopped working. She fell to her knees on the asphalt, her white dress staining with oil and dirt. She put her hands over her face and let out a sound I never want to hear again. It was a guttural, raw wail of grief. Not for Ryan, but for the life she thought she was building. For the love that was a lie. The guests looked away, embarrassed by the raw intimacy of her pain. I wanted to run to her. Every fiber of my being screamed to scoop her up and tell her it wasn't her fault. But I waited. I stood still for 10 long seconds. She needed to feel the weight of the collapse. She needed to understand the consequences of blindness. The auditor in me knew that if I cushioned the fall too much, she wouldn't learn how to stand up again. She needed to hit the bottom so she could find the foundation. Only when her sobbing turned to quiet, shaking breaths did I walk over. I knelt down beside her. I didn't care about my tuxedo pants on the grease. I offered my hand, the same hand that had held hers when she learned to walk. She looked up. Her makeup was a ruin. Her eyes were red and swollen. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I ruined everything. You were right. You were always right." "No," I said. I pulled her up. She was heavy with grief, but I held her weight. I brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You didn't ruin everything, Jessica," I said, looking her in the eye. "You just destroyed the lie." I looked at the locked hotel doors, at the confused guests, at the vanishing SUVs. "The wedding is ruined," I admitted, "but your life has just been saved." We went to the police station. I drove the Mustang. Jessica sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, twisting the engagement ring on her finger, until I gently reached over and took it from her. I put it in the ashtray. The station was fluorescent and cold. It smelled of stale coffee and despair. She gave her statement to David. It took 3 hours. She laid it all out. The passwords he demanded. The documents she signed without reading. The investments she thought were real. I waited in the hallway. I drank bad coffee from a styrofoam cup. When she came out, she looked translucent, empty, like a house that had been gutted by fire. We walked to the car in the parking lot. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows. "Where do I go?" she asked, her voice hollow. "The apartment is in his name," she whispered. "The rent isn't paid. The landlord called me while I was in the room. He's changing the locks." She looked at me, terrified. "I have nothing, Dad. My credit is ruined. My savings are gone." "You can come home," I said simply. "Your room is still there." She slumped against the car door. "Thank you. God, thank you." "But," I said. The word hung in the air. She stiffened. She looked at me, waiting for the lecture. I know. I was stupid." "No," I said. "You were trusting. There is a difference." "But trust requires verification." I opened the car door for her, but blocked her path for a moment. "Things will be different, Jessica. I am not giving you money to fix this," I said firmly. "You co-signed the loans," I continued. "The debt is legally yours. I will help you negotiate with the creditors. I will help you set up a payment plan, but you will pay them." She blinked, surprised by the hardness in my tone. "You will get a job," I said. "Maybe 2. You will work, and you will pay down every cent. Ryan stole using your name, and once a month," I said, "we will sit at my desk, and you will show me your ledger. You will show me where every dollar goes, until the debt is 0. She looked at me. For a moment, I thought she might argue. I thought she might cry again, but she didn't. She straightened her spine. A glint of steel appeared in her eyes. Catherine Steele. She nodded. "Okay," she said. "That's fair. I'm doing this because I love you," I said, my voice softening. "I want you to be strong. I want you to be audit-proof." She stepped forward and hugged me. It was a fierce, desperate hug. She buried her face in my shoulder. "I love you, Dad," she mumbled into my jacket. Then she pulled back and looked at me. "And I don't hate you," she said. "I never did. He made me write that." "I know," I said. I deleted it. 6 months later, the air at the lake house was crisp. Autumn was turning the leaves to fire and gold. I sat on the deck in my Adirondack chair, a blanket over my knees. The water was glass, reflecting the trees. The screen door creaked. Jessica came out. She was wearing jeans and an oversized sweater. Her hair was tied back. She looked tired but healthy. The shadows under her eyes were gone. She was working as an office manager at a logistics firm. It wasn't glamorous. It was hard work. She was paying off the credit card debt, $500 a month. She handed me a glass of lemonade. Mail came, she said. She held up a white envelope. It was from the Department of Corrections. Notification of victim status. She read the return address. Ryan's sentencing hearing was next week. He had pleaded guilty to avoid a 20-year sentence. He was looking at 8 years in federal prison. Are you going? She asked, looking at the envelope. I took a sip of lemonade. It was tart, just the way I liked it. No, I said. The case is closed. The file is archived. I have no interest in the footnotes. I looked at her. Are you? She took the envelope from my hand. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she looked at the water. No, she said. I have work tomorrow. I'm picking up an extra shift. I can't afford the day off. She ripped the envelope in half. Then in half again. She walked to the railing and dropped the pieces into the recycling bin. I smiled. Good answer, I said. She sat down in the chair next to me. We watched the sun dip below the tree line. The temperature dropped, but it didn't feel cold. It felt crisp, clean. The ledger was balanced. The bad debt had been written off. The fraudulent assets had been seized. And the foundation. I looked at my daughter, watching the sunset with clear, wise eyes. The foundation was solid. If you've stuck with Frank and Jessica through the wreckage and the rebuild, hit that like button. It's been a long audit, but the books are finally closed. Do you think Frank's tough love approach at the end was the right call, or should he have just paid the debt? Let us know in the comments below. I read every single one, and if you want more stories about justice, secrets, and the truth hidden in the numbers, make sure you subscribe. We have a new file opening soon.